Hello, this is Kathy. Welcome to day 15 of the 30-day coloring challenge. I'm showing you these two cards on my blog today, and I want to show you how I created this bouquet here. I'm calling it Fake It Watercoloring. I love this brand new stamp. This is one of the new releases for Alt New, and it's really gorgeous. So right here, I'm deciding how I want the bouquet to go, which stamps, what leaves, and then I'm going to stamp them on some Tim Holtz watercolor paper and color them up. Now I've gone ahead and I've stamped the flowers, and I'm drawing a stem on each flower in each leaf, and I'm using a Sharpie fine tip marker. It's you can watercolor, use Copics, whatever. It's a permanent marker and it's fabulous. So I'm just doing some free-handed stems here. You don't have to worry how they look. They're going to be cut out, so it all works out in the end. I'm grabbing some Distress inks right here, and I'm putting them in this palette. And I will be adding water to this. You'll see that, and then watercolor. I just want to do a wash on the flowers from my bouquet. So I'm just added some water there, and I just, like I said, I just wanted to wash. I also just did a video with one of these plaid backgrounds in the back, and you guys really liked it, and I thought I would do it again. It's just nice to get the background out of the way before you even start the card. So I heat set it, and then I just like to bend the paper to kind of get it back to where I need it. I'll be gluing it down on some cardstock, so it'll be nice and flat by the time I'm finished. Now I've grabbed my white gel pen. I like to warm it up on my finger. You can see all the little white dots on there. I feel like it just lets the pen flow better if it's warmed up. So I'm taking my faux white stitching, and I'm just freehanding some lines, random lines, across my plaid background. The paper's 100% dry. I dried it with my heat gun, and I just wanted to add a little bit of accents, a little bit of white to the plaid, and it looks, you can see that the lines aren't straight, and that doesn't matter because they're consistently not straight. Now I set that aside. That's my background. I'll use that later, and I'm just putting, I apologize for some reason I missed this, but I scribbled some Tombow watercolor markers into my palette, and I dripped some water on top, and I'm just doing a wash of color with these Tombow watercolor markers. I did the same thing with the Distress. I really could be using the Distress for this, but I just thought I would just give it a try here. I like the vibrancy of the Tombow markers, so I thought, well, hey, I'll just use these instead of getting out the rest of my Distress. But there's so many things you can watercolor with. So I have my wash here, and I'm just putting a wash on each flower, and then I'm going to super speed this up. But before I do, if you take the watercolor marker direct to the paper, you have to have dry paper. So if you color it directly on the paper, then you can wet your brush and soften down that line and let the watercolor do its trick, where it's a harder line and then it gets softer. So I just dipped my brush. Today I'm using a water brush that's empty, and I just put my tip in the marker that I scribbled in the palette, and I'm with water, and I'm just using that to soften where I colored with the Tombow. Now, if you apply the marker directly to the paper like this, you get much more vibrant colors. So there's a couple different ways, or you could just, like I did the wash, you could just go and add more color, and it's just a softer look. So I'm going to finish coloring the petals on this flower using the direct to paper technique, and I'll be dipping my brush in with some more of the marker with water just to wash that out. This video was like an hour something, And I thought, well, I think I need to cut this down, so that's why I'm going to speed it up. Now, what else? Sorry, it's weird when you're watching yourself and you're trying to think what you want to say, but I always like to try and leave like a sweet spot, a much lighter area in each petal. And for some reason with this flower, it just wasn't, there's the direct tip to the paper. It didn't soften like I wanted it. I don't know if it was the brush, the paper, if I was over wetting it. And I just kept working it, and it was just, I just wasn't liking it at all. So I ended up just putting it aside and picking up the other two flowers. Also, if you notice, the stem I drew on this is kind of wonky. But you know, I'm not going to let that bother me, because technically you don't even need to draw a stem. You could just cut pieces of paper, glue it on the back, and color those. Now here on the second flower, I'm not putting the marker directly on the paper. I'm just picking up from my palette where I scribbled that color down. And you can see it's a much more, it's more muted and more of a washy look. But I'm craving a little bit more color. I could drop some more red or purple in, and I'm picking up some of the pink and I just put on the other flowers. I'm just kind of messing around. It just wasn't happening for me today. Obviously, I need to take online card classes, watercolor class, and watch more Dawn from W+9 videos. So that's why I said, you'll see how this works out in the end. I can fake anything. In the end, my card looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. But I faked it because it just wasn't happening. Now I've gone on to my leaves here, and I'm going direct to the paper again and just dipping it in some water this time to bring that color down. And I like how the leaves came together better. I just experimented more with different colors, and I always just seem to be happier when I have that result. And you'll see that I've got two different greens, and I'm going to end up picking up some lavender and putting that in and just kind of watering it all down. One thing that I have learned from Dawn is that when your paper gets too wet, when it's saturated too much, you just can't add any more color. So you either have to set it aside and let it dry, or grab a heat gun, dry it, and then add more color. So keep that in mind when you're doing watercoloring. It's something I know I need to keep in. I just feel like, I don't know, I'm good at faking it, let's just say that. All right, so I picked up an olive green marker and just playing around. There's absolutely no reason why I need to stay in the lines on the leaves, because I'm going to be cutting it out. I don't have the die cuts, but I like fussy cutting these anyway, it's easy. I'm just bringing some of that olive color on the sides. I'm not thinking about it, I just want more color. Now I love how the purple just automatically gives it much more interest. Now I've set those aside, and I have these other two flowers, and I'm just playing around with them. I'm just going to put this on super speed. I spent a lot of time just messing around, and I really am not an authority on the subject, so it's probably best that I just stop talking. I'm just so happy that my card came out in the end, because these flowers, they just didn't have enough interest. One thing I haven't done during this challenge, you might want to try it, is say you finish this now, you cut it out, or even if you don't cut it out, you could mask it a little bit. But if you take some distress ink and you just distress the edges, it automatically makes it pop and look like you spent a lot of time, and it gives you that shading. It just looks really good. So I'll try and remember to do a video with that. Now, like I said, I did not like these flowers, and this is the best way to fake it. I have some distress ink here. I have this doily stamp, and I'm using a heavy hand, and I'm adding texture to those flowers, and it just covers up anything that you don't like, and it just makes them look interesting right away, and it adds more depth of color where the stencil is. So automatically I'm like, okay, now I can use this. Now it's working for me a little bit. It just made it more interesting. I almost stopped so many times and just said, forget about it. So here's my image. You just saw a photo. There's this little area. I'm adding some white gel pen to that little shaded area. You could either add a complementary color for interest, or you can just white it out. And I just wanted to white out certain different areas. I also added white dots to the center of the flowers, and I'm going to go back and add little tiny white dots on top of, little tiny black dots on top of the white dots. And on the leaf here, you can see I'm adding a white gel pen line, and on this tiny flower, I'm adding the white gel pen to the center. Now I'm picking up the super fine tip marker, and I'm going over the white to soften the line, and because sometimes a little bit of white goes over the black line, and I'm correcting that, and it makes it look so much better. I'm going to zoom in here for you. Okay, zooming in really helps. Now you can see what I'm doing. I hope it doesn't blur out. But I'm taking my super fine black pen, and I'm dotting on top of the white dots. And it's just such a minuscule little pin dot, but I mean, you really notice it. Now you can see I have the super fine tip marker, and I'm butting. The white gel pen is a little bit raised. So if you take the black marker, it kind of guides you to put it up against the end. Just try it. I think you understand what I'm saying. Every now and then you get white on the tip and just scribble that off on the side. I don't mean to sound like a broken record. I talk about this all the time, but I really want you guys to give this a shot. Now I have some twine. I only have one color twine. I like to custom color it. I'm sticking some in some leftover packaging I saved. I have my refill from a Copic marker. I just put some in that bag, and I'm mushing all that color around, and that's coloring the twine for me. So I set it aside. I'm letting it air dry, and then I'll hit it with the heat gun if I need to. Now I wanted to just fiddle daddle here with my stems and my flowers. And this is watercolor paper, and if you just very carefully, you can bend it. This stem was more straight, and I wanted to bend it so it was fit a loose bouquet much better visually. So just take it and bend it, and sure, you might get little wrinkles in the paper, but that's okay. Mother Nature is not perfect anyway, and it just looks more natural. So just play around, bend them gently, and then I'm adding some foam tape to the back because I want to stagger the flowers. Now, you just gotta play around with it. Now, this was one stem remember that wonky stem? I ended up cutting that off, and I just cut a piece of paper. I'm taping that back on the back of that large flower, and then I'll just stick that in the back of my bouquet. And then I'll pop some of the other flowers with some foam tape and just kind of putz around until you get it the way that you like it. So I'm making sure that I have foam tape on that very corner of the flower, because that's the only part that's touching the large flower. And then that will just give me that dimension I want. Now it was sticking to my cardstock, so I put some of that cut packaging behind it, and I'm just going to poke these stems through the flowers, figure out how I want that to go, and then I'm going to check my twine, make sure it's dry, and then I'll tie a bow around my bouquet. So I'm sticking some glossy accents behind this particular stem. Just want to hold that in place and just add each piece as it falls into this bouquet here. So there, it's all set except for this one last stem, just a little bending action, and then I'll be sticking that. Now there was a few like dead spots on this, so I just grabbed a Copic marker and I'm going to pop that on top of this flower, and then I'll be set, and I'll just add some foam tape to the back here, tie my bouquet, and I'll be ready to put on my background. So I always test the twine to make sure that it's dry. Just run it through my fingers and then I know it's dry. So just a super simple bow. Try not to tie it too tightly. And that is it. I just like to futz around, pull it, hold down the center, square off the sides of the bow, twist them a little bit, just mess around. Then I'll be adding this to the background and some of Lucy's sequins, Lucy's little things. I like it because there's a variety of different sizes and colors. So I'm using some multi-matte medium on the center of the bow, and then I'll be putting the sequins down on there. And I like to put a sequence on top of a sequence. So I'll add another sequence on top of this, and then 2 others on the background. So while I do that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up if you like this. By no means, I'm not saying I'm an expert at watercoloring. I'm not even saying that I'm good, but I think I can show you how to fake it, and that's what I'm good at. So that is it. Thank you for watching. There's a giveaway on my blog and another card, and I'm really enjoying everything that you all are sharing for the coloring challenge. Here it is up close. You can see the 2 sequins there. The stencil just really made the card look good, thank goodness. And then there's the other card on my blog. So thank you again. Have a great day and see you next time.